Hey everyone, so I guess since I talked about my favorite books of 2018, I also need to talk about my most disappointing books of 2018. I've seen this video going around BookTube and I thought about not doing it just because I like to keep things positive and talk about all the good books out there. And I didn't really know if I had any until I looked at my Goodreads and I found a few that were disappointing. I did a little poll on Instagram to see if y'all would be interested in this video, and majority of people said yes. So here I am going to talk about the most disappointing books to me for 2018. Now, I will say, majority of these books aren't bad books. Mostly they just weren't what I was expecting or what I was hoping for. So they really just let me down, mostly because of my expectations. And maybe that's not necessarily the book's fault, but maybe the fault of hype or the way the book was promoted or advertised or its summary. I guess that's more what I'm talking about, is books that didn't meet my expectations, but also just didn't deliver a good story for me. I would be very happy if some of you out there found enjoyment out of these books, because I want all of you to enjoy what you're reading and to love books. So if you enjoyed these books, that's awesome. Please let me know in the comments if you did and why you enjoyed them. Maybe it'll help me understand these books a little bit more or see them from a different perspective. So a lot of these books I gave like 3 stars. So not great, but also not terrible. They just weren't what I was expecting and disappointed me in the end. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. I'm just gonna go ahead and go in chronological order of when I read them. The first one is Brave by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the 3rd book in the Wicked trilogy, which is kind of an urban fantasy new adult series. It's all about fae and it has a steamy romance. So I would say the first book, Wicked, was the best out of the trilogy. I loved Wicked, but it came out a few years ago and I had to wait a few years in between books. So maybe that's part of the reason I didn't enjoy this conclusion as much. I didn't hate it, it wasn't terrible, but I was disappointed by this last book just because I loved the first book so much. I just felt this last book was kind of boring. I didn't really care anymore. The side character, Tink, is one of my favorite side characters of all time. He still was great in this book and he was the highlight of it for me. But I don't know if it's just because it took me so long to read this series and I had to wait so long in between books that my interest was lost throughout the years. I'm not really sure, but this last book just didn't do it for me. This next one I did enjoy, but it was not what I was hoping for, and it's The Final Six by Alexandra Monier. Not really the fault of the book, but I was expecting something pretty different. In this book, Earth isn't doing so well and humans have discovered that one of Jupiter's moons is habitable, and they want to send a mission of teens to go to the moon and start to inhabit it so that they can make a community or civilization for more people to come. And it's like this big competition for teens to get chosen to be on this mission. We follow a few of those teens and see from their perspectives, and they all have to go to like this like space training camp to compete. I really thought that at least some of this book would take place on Jupiter's moon, but it didn't. Pretty much the whole book was them competing and also getting to know the characters and also uncovering some secrets of this corporation that put all this together. Everything isn't as it seems and all of that. But I was just let down because I really wanted it to be like a sci-fi human stepping onto this foreign moon for the first time kind of book, and it wasn't. That just made me kind of sad, but it was good. I grew to love the characters. I was pretty emotional in the end of it. I was connected to the characters. I loved the diversity of the book. I felt like it did have a few strong points. It just disappointed me because I was really hoping for like some alien sci-fi stuff, and this book didn't have it. Maybe the next book will. Again, this next one kind of falls into the same category as The Final Six, and that is Sea Witch by Sarah Henning. I was wanting a really dark, twisted mermaid story, kind of the origin of Ursula, but this wasn't exactly that. Again, I think I gave this one 3 stars. It felt way more like a historical fiction read. I believe it was set in like the 1800s, and we follow these characters around as they kind of had drama between themselves with love and friendship. And there were some water elements to it. And in the end, it kind of did go back to that like original Little Mermaid story and kind of like the origin story of Ursula and all of that. But it just wasn't enough for me. I wanted like most of the book to be like that. So I was pretty let down by it, but I have not read the like original Little Mermaid. So maybe this book has more connections to it than I picked up on. Maybe this book is more close to it than it seemed to me. But as far as like just the Disney Little Mermaid movie, it wasn't really like that, which is okay. I expected it to be different. I just felt like they spent way too much time on land arguing over love and friendship instead of it taking place in the water and dealing with like water creatures and water magic. There was some magic, but I don't know, it just wasn't enough for me. This next one was probably the worst book I read this entire year, which is kind of sad, but it's School Tales by Sharon Merrick. This one wasn't popular or anything. I read it because I was like hosting a summer read-along thing, which was a ton of fun, and I did enjoy a lot of the books that were a part of it, but this one in particular just didn't do it for me. I can't even like really tell you what this book is about. It's about this group of teenagers that want to totally like revolutionize their high school and kind of get into like education reform, and it's basically like a commentary on the education system and how poor it is and how it could be better. The ideas of the author portrayed through a set of characters, and I guess that's all books, but this book was so transparent, and I felt like it would have been just more beneficial if the author just wrote like an essay on all of her ideas that she wanted to enact in the school system. I felt like a lot of the ideas and the themes were relevant and poignant and important, but I just didn't think they were delivered in a very good way. It just felt very contrived. I didn't believe in any of the characters and their stories, and I couldn't get through this book fast enough. I felt towards the middle and end, I was definitely skimming it just to get it over with, and yeah, this was definitely my least favorite, most disappointing book of the year. And the final book I have to talk about is See All the Stars by Kit Frick. This one I was sad about because I love mystery thrillers. This was a new YA mystery thriller in 2018, and I was super excited for it. I got it for review and I was like, this is gonna be great. The premise sounded really intriguing, but it totally fell flat for me. Oh man, this one was pretty rough. It took me forever to read it, and it's not even a long book, but it was just so like kind of boring and dull and extremely predictable. It's about this girl that has this group of friends, but one friend in particular, they have a very weird dynamic going on, and the story really is about their relationship, but you kind of have these extra friends that are involved, and it goes back and forth between the past and the present, and you're trying to figure out what happened in the past and why that's affecting things going on in the present. And pretty much the whole book, you're just trying to figure out what event happened in the past to cause all of this ruckus and stuff in the present. And I totally saw it coming. It was extremely predictable for me. It just dragged on. It was pretty forgettable, and I felt like it was so similar to so many other YA mystery books out there. When I put it down, I did not want to pick it back up. Like I said, it took me so long to read this book, and it shouldn't have. One thing I did enjoy about it was the friend dynamics. I think in general, kind of the whole friend dynamic in high school was pretty relatable, and it was interesting to read about, but ultimately this book was just, I was so glad to finish it, and I think I ended up giving it like 2.75, 3 stars, just because I did find some parts of it intriguing and interesting. Overall, I just didn't really like it. Maybe in 2019, I need to be a little bit harsher with my star ratings, because as I'm looking back on these books, I'm like, man, I kind of gave that book like 3 stars, but now that I'm looking back on it and talking about it months later, I'm like, no, that's more of a 2-star book. Alright, so those are the 5 books I had to talk about. Let me know in the comments, like I said, if you've read these books, if you felt the same way I did, or if you felt differently. I'd love to know. And let me know which books you read in 2018 that you didn't love so much, and were your least favorite and most disappointing books of the year. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.